Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Universalist Unitarian community of Halifax. My name is Ben Robbins, and I'm glad to be your minister. I grew up in a Unitarian congregation, and here are three things I remember. The potlucks were delicious and healthy. There was overflowing compassion that was present both in the congregation and in the streets doing the work of justice. And a guest speaker once said, "I hear you ask tough questions, so I've come prepared." Thank you to our volunteers and staff who make our Sunday services possible. Special thanks today to our service assistant, Mary Lou McDonald, Carol Westell on keys, Riley Friesen on tech, as well as those who got coffee going and who noticed who could use a hello. Please see the announcements in the order of service and note that the sign up for the Thanksgiving potluck is in the ballroom. And today, Margaret Galbraith is leading a climate conversation after the service. And there is one change to the order of service. Mary Lou will do a reading before the reflection. If you are new or we haven't met yet, I would love to say hi after the service. And now we will have a land and climate acknowledgement by Mary Frances.
We are gathered here today for this service in Chibuktuk, in what we now call Halifax in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We make land acknowledgements not just to show respect for our shared treaty relationship, but also as a moment to recognize that most of us in this room are settlers on this land and are privileged to be here. It's an opportunity to reflect on our community's commitments towards reconciliation through our UU principles and values, and also on a more personal level, what we do as individuals to move ourselves closer to reconciliation with Indigenous people. Given Indigenous people's connection to the environment, I think an act of reconciliation is to vote in the municipal election for candidates who are committed to protecting the environment. And so to help do this, the Ecology Action Center sent a survey to all the candidates that are running in the municipal election and asked them about their stance on a variety of things, like green space, wildlife corridors, transit, road safety, food strategy, affordable energy, and watershed management and coastal protection. So all those topics were covered in the survey. Out of 79 candidates that received the survey, 54 responded. And all of their responses are available on the EAC's website. I do have that web link. It's a bit of a longer link, but feel free to come and chat with me afterwards and I can give that to you. So I'm going to review it before I cast my vote, and would encourage you to do that too.
We light our chalice today with the words of the Reverend Peter Friedrich. Enriched by our differences and joined together in our search for meaning, we covenant with ourselves and each other to seek truth in a spirit of love, to strive for justice, and to serve others with a joyful heart. Light. Got it. The opening hymn is number 21 in the Gray Hymnal.
and Carol will play it through once. I'm 20 years old. Not right now, not right now. Sometimes on the inside in some ways. That's another story. I'm halfway through a physics degree. I love the program, super interesting. I love the challenge, but I'm also living in a bubble. I go to Montreal for the weekend to visit my big brother. He is a student radical. We decide to read in the park while listening to the hand drumming. So I browse his bookshelf for a book to take. Pedagogy of the Oppressed. No, not today. Jonathan Kozol, if you know him. No, not for a park. The Teenage Liberation Handbook. Oh, this looks interesting. So the full title is The Teenage Liberation Handbook, How to Quit School and Get a Real Life and Education. So we have books to read in the park, and off we go. So this book really is a handbook. There's a chunk of it dedicated to how to learn on your own in each major subject area. It's a handbook. But at the start, there's a story. And in the table of contents, it just says, first, a nice little story. The story is something like, a student is sitting in class bored. The teacher is droning on. The class is tuned out. The student looks out the window. A bird flutters by, lands in a tree. The wind blows through the leaves. The student opens the window, climbs out, goes over to the tree, picks fresh fruit, and experiences real life for the first time. And by the time I finished that story, I decided to drop out of school. It's time, so yeah. There's no moral to the story, I'm just telling a story. But I decided to awaken an appetite for living my own life.
In our communal gatherings, we take time to acknowledge the many joys, sorrows, and complex truths of our individual lives. Joys shared lift us all, sorrows shared comfort the sorrowful, and complex truths can often be examined by stating them out loud in a loving community. If you have a joy, sorrow, or complex truth that you wish to share this morning, please come forward to drop a stone in our well of community. If you prefer, raise your hand, and I will bring you the microphone and place the stone for you. Easier for you to come forward, I think.
We also have Sylvia online as well.
Come and use so that people on Zoom can see you.
Yes, and am I to drop a stone in the well?
Please do.
Okay.
Can you unmute the microphone?
How do I?
It is unmuted.
It is unmuted. Great. Okay. I'm putting this stone in the well for Bob Munson. Bob was a longtime member of this community. He hasn't been around lately because of mobility issues, and he is in the hospital 8.1 of the Halifax Infirmary and is happy to receive the public. Bob is the happiest in his life. He's very happy. He thinks that he's got a job on a cruise ship earning $1,000 a day, tax-free. He thinks that his IQ is in the millionth percentile. Everything is going very, very, very well in his head. And I think what I've learned from that is that happiness is kind of based on your perceptions, right? So this is thank you for all the lessons in my life I've learned from Bob.
Can you let Sylvia know that you can talk?
Mary Lou, could you say Sylvia? Sylvia, go ahead.
Oh,
Never mind, she took herself off.
Sylvia's online?
Not any longer.
She changed her mind.
Oh. Well, I will add one additional stone for all the complex thoughts that have remained silently in our hearts. Oh, Mary Frances.
I'll be the penultimate rock. I have a joy that I have a 1-year-old baby. She just turned 1 a couple days ago, and post-birthday party miracle, she slept through the night last night.
Large stone for that one.
Oh, Sylvia's back.
Well, I just have a quick joy. I'm visiting from Michigan, and I lived in Ohio till 2 years ago, and the UU that I went to there is remarkably like this. And I want to drop a stone in for the UUs, because we're remarkable. And I'm glad you talking about your politics is so refreshing. So many options.
Hang around, it's not always that way.
Could you invite Sylvia to talk? Sylvia?
She's back. She's back on.
Okay, online?
Just tell Sylvia to go ahead. Oh, there she is. No, that's fine. She's trying.
Hello?
There you are. Okay.
Hello.
Sylvia, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I suppose that Barbara Hersani is not there this morning again. This time she has shingles and she didn't want to give it to anybody else, but she's not doing too badly. That's it. And she said to say hi. Did you get it? No?
And one more stone for all the things we thought about and didn't say this morning.
As our joys and sorrows and complex truths marinate, let's take a moment of shared meditation. And first we'll do it in silence and then with music. You might notice and let go of the thoughts passing through your mind. You might simply be with your breath.
We all give to our community in various ways according to our abilities and talents. Taking up the offering on Sundays is symbolic of the many ways we contribute. You can also send a check to treasurer at uuch.ca or by mail to our street address. Today's plate collection will be used towards funding the Saturday brunch we offer to our neighbors and friends. The offertory hymn is number 95.
And Carol will play it through once.
You have a halo sitting in that window.
Feel it on the back of my neck.
There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere.
The promised reading. Question: how many Universalist Unitarians does it take to change a light bulb? Answer: we choose not to make a statement either in favor of or against the need for a light bulb. However, if in your own journey you have found that light bulbs work for you, that is wonderful. You are invited to write a poem or compose a modern dance about your personal relationship with your light bulb. Present it next month at our annual Light Bulb Sunday service, in which we will explore a number of light bulb traditions, including incandescent, fluorescent, three-way, long life, and tinted, all of which are equally valid paths to luminescence. I noticed nobody changed the damn light bulb.
All right, thank you, Mary Lou. Oh my God. And thank you, Margaret, for sharing that with us. As I've been getting to know you, I'll sometimes ask, what is most meaningful for you about this community? Why is this community an important part of your life? And often the answer is along the lines of, life is meaningful here. We have real conversations about real things. I get recentered here, or I get restored here, or I find hope here, or I get in gear here. But curiously, I've heard two responses that seem contradictory. I love being around free thinkers, and I love being around like-minded people. So what do you mean you like being around free thinkers? Well, after the sermon, if we pass the microphone, we hear a variety of perspectives. People speak from the heart. You know they mean it. The energy in the room can shift when we reveal our inner world, what's really going on in our thoughts. So our minds go to different places during the reflection, and I love hearing other people's journeys. I love the broader perspective that includes all of our perspectives. And I think that's less likely to happen when the sermon is more like a lesson with a correct answer, and you either parrot it back or you keep your own view to yourself. Life comes alive when your thoughts are welcome and mine are welcome too. So let's take a few breaths to remember how it feels when you have an opinion that isn't broadly shared and you feel fully welcome. Hopefully you've had that experience. It might be your experience in this community or with your friends. So how have you felt when you have an opinion that isn't broadly shared and you feel fully welcome? Okay, we love free thinking, but we also love being around like-minded people. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Maybe it means people who are compassionate, people who help those in need, people who work for fair systems, people who see themselves as part of the web of life and not the center of the universe, people who support my journey and our journey. So let's take a few breaths to remember how it feels when you're around like-minded people, when you know that the things you say will resonate. Remember how that feels. In the Unitarian tradition, this combination of like-minded and free thinking goes deep. Ralph Waldo Emerson and his peers, who became known as the Transcendentalist Club, or the Transcendentalists, they started a club. They started meeting in the home of Frederick Henry Hedge, and Hedge said it was occasional meetings of like-minded people. We're like-minded. But here's the invitation they sent out. And pardon the gendered language, here's what they said. The meeting was for men who earnestly seek the truth with perfect toleration for other opinions. No man shall be admitted whose presence excludes any topic. So we're free thinkers with no opinion out of bounds. We're like-minded, we're free thinkers. We're both. Somehow we're both. Humans are born with this instinct to ask why. Why? I don't know if your 1-year-old is at that stage yet. Getting there. A number of people in this community come from a childhood where you were told to stop asking why, to stop expressing doubt, to believe what you were told to believe, or at least pretend to believe it, go along with it. You told me that you got out of there as soon as you could. You eventually found a community where your questions were welcome. And I don't doubt that if you hadn't found this place, you would have planted seeds for a community like this place. The human condition has this instinct for inquiry. But the human condition also has an instinct for dogma. You tell me what to believe and I will gladly believe it. When I was a kid, I was reading Archie comics. And Archie complained about algebra. He hated algebra. That resonates with you. Well, I put the comic book down. I went to my mom and I said, I hate algebra. She said, no, you don't. So I said, what's algebra? So I had jumped on Archie's anti-algebra bandwagon. So I always have to be on the lookout. Am I jumping on a bandwagon? Am I saying what I'm supposed to say instead of what I believe? And sometimes it's more subtle than that. Am I going along with a trendy but incomplete truth rather than speaking up to flesh out a fuller picture? Church dogma does not dominate Halifax like it did in 1837 when we started organizing, when every church in town taught eternal damnation. You can read our own Heather Watts' book to learn the verbal abuse the Universalists put up with when presenting their views in 19th century Halifax. But we basically won. I don't know if won is the right word, but by 1900, there were plenty of places where you could say that nobody was damned to eternity. The dogmatic threat had gone down. The poet T.S. Eliot was descended from a Unitarian missionary. And while the Unitarians were casting aside dogmas, Eliot said, "You cannot just be shedding things. Eventually you have to be for something, moving towards something." Eliot thought Unitarians were too much about open-mindedness and not enough about what the open mind is drawn to believe. So T.S. Eliot explored. He looked at the world from various perspectives. He invented a world of adventurous cats, which you might know about. But eventually he moved back to his ancestral home. He converted to the Church of England, and he wrote these words: "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." I was once browsing at a public library in the section on Canadian politics. And there was a book about various types of Canadian conservative. And I have to admit, I did not know there were that many flavors of Canadian conservative. Yeah, so each chapter was by a different author, and one of the authors said something like this: "I grew up, I left home, I explored the world, I opened myself up to different ways of life. I reconsidered everything. I considered how to change my own home based on what I learned, but I came to believe that the wisest way to live was to center my life on things like love and justice. I didn't invent love and justice. Those are old concepts, and I choose to dedicate my life to continuing their lineage." So for him, he said, that's what it means for me when I say I'm a conservative. That was a very new point of view for me. Free thinking means that you distance yourself from dogma, you explore, you try things on, you consider what rings true, but eventually perhaps you find actually some things really do seem to be true. I hope that the tradition this conservative found, this lineage of love and justice that I love, I hope that his lineage that he grabbed onto didn't have too much baggage attached to it. So I think T.S. Eliot had a fair point. We can't simply be for free thinking. We do need to attain something. We can become enamored with this search. I discovered another point of view this week, so enriching. But along with that search, I need something to ground myself in. So we continue to come together in a place that believes in justice, equity, compassion, and human relations, and more. So whatever you discover this week, whatever wormhole you go down into learning, into other perspectives and other ways of being, no matter how your spirit takes you, next Sunday you know you can reground yourself in the rich soil of justice, equity, and compassion. You can reground yourself in the relationships that remind you who you are. You can reground in awe and wonder and humility and more. These days, a lot of people are going down wormholes. A lot of people are doing Google searches. I've spoken to parents concerned about where their teenagers' online explorations are taking them. conspiracy theories, misinformation, dogma, polarized thinking, unhealthy goals. And it's not in the least only teenagers. The adult human mind easily grabs a hold of a new worldview or a new bandwagon. So we need to be free thinking, because if we're not, dogma will take hold. And we need to be grounded in the best that we know, or else we'll become grounded in something else. Neither extreme can last. Too much freedom, and people will find things to latch onto. Too much like-mindedness, and there will be a schism over some minutia. Here's what the author David Foster Wallace said about freedom. The really important kind of freedom involves attention and awareness and discipline and effort and being able to truly care about other people and to sacrifice for them over and over in myriad petty little unsexy ways every day. Free thinking grounded in attention and care. But sometimes we want more than that. Sometimes we want more in common than just a caring outlook. Sometimes we need agreement on what issues to care about and what actions to take. So every few years at the Canadian Unitarian Council annual meeting, someone proposes that we agree to a statement on Israel and Palestine. My understanding is that every time this happens, strong feelings come up, no agreement is reached, and we decide not to try that again for a few years. And then a year ago, October 7th happened, and Israel's response happened. And some people said, of course, now we ought to agree. So before I continue, I'm going to place a stone of sorrow for those killed, for those grieving lost ones, for those living in fear, and for those who just want a home. And I'm going to place a stone for the complex truth that even when something is crystal clear to me, it might be complex for you because we're looking through different lenses or from different histories. In general, I'm not someone who is likely to say we ought to agree. I might feel frustration that we don't agree when the evidence is so clear to me. I might say I find the evidence very compelling. I hope you'll take a look. But when I say we ought to agree, I find that the words act like a wedge, brings in those in agreement closer, but it pushes away those who need dialogue. I tend to prefer persuasion rather than peer pressure. I tend to prefer stories over dogma. I generally prefer to share only 90% of my reasoning so that you complete the picture for yourself. UU communities will find different balances between being free-thinking and being like-minded. Some congregations today will have a very clear shared opinion on Israel-Palestine, I think, and some will encourage dialogue. Even within this community, you might be part of one pocket of the community where you appreciate like-mindedness, and you might be part of another pocket where you delight in the free thinking. So we ourselves here embody the many ways of being that we welcome into the world. Some feelings might have coming up on this topic for you, so why don't we take a few breaths just to consider what came up for you and consider what thoughts you might want to share when Mary Lou passes the microphone.
Strange silence among Unitarians.
This is a little story in favor of like-mindedness. Not that I don't mind, I'm happy to be a free thinker too, but I'm part of a national board for an organization of Christians of all flavors and many Muslims. And on the board, I assumed that everyone was one of those, either strong Christians or Muslims. And 6 months ago, a woman on our chat, a WhatsApp group that we're on, wished Eid Mubarak to everyone and said, "May your prayers and good deeds be accepted and the suffering of all people around the world be alleviated." And it took me 24 hours, and I really, really hesitated to do it. But 24 hours later, I said, "I'm sorry I missed wishing everyone Eid Mubarak yesterday. Being probably the only atheist in the group, may I say, if only there were someone to answer our prayers for less suffering in the world," as Lena wrote. "It's all up to us and our good deeds. Let's keep on doing that small drop that we can do." And immediately one person in a side conversation said, "You're an atheist too."
All seems quiet, Ben.
Pam, did you lift your hand?
I don't want to go right to the Israel-Palestine conflict, but I will, in a sense. This is not a topic I can have, a conversation that I can have with my father. He's a child of a man whose family was decimated by the Holocaust. So it's his lens on things makes conversations about that kind of issue very difficult. And so I'm not going to get into the details of that conversation, but I appreciate being here where the conversation can be had, calmly and serenely, even if we disagree.
Hello, I'm Doug Moe, and I'm actually visiting from.
You're good. He's pointing to the next person.
Yeah, I'm visiting from Grand River Unitarian Congregation in Ontario, and we have a spirituality club. There's about 24 members out of, I don't know, a congregation of 200 maybe. So we meet in people's houses and we talk about basically, sort of like deep conversations about spirituality, and some religion is in there. Some of the people who attend are Christians. I'm not, but it's a diverse group. And one of the things that came up in conversation was, well, when we have coffee hour after the service, like there's certain things like, you don't really want to say to the general congregation because it sounds too religious. So we decided, well, okay, Spirituality Club is sort of a safe zone for, talking about things like, God, for example. Even though I'm an atheist, I'm there for those conversations. But maybe we were thinking, well, maybe there's a little bit too much like-mindedness during coffee hour.
I was struck as Ben was talking about how difficult that topic was, and I will say that I had a gobsmacking moment this week when my ex-sister-in-law accused Israel of carrying out European colonialism. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, that had never occurred to me. I still don't know what I think about it. But it shook me. And I think that openness is what we all need to strive for, eh?
Would you like to come up, or do you want to sit?
Yeah. Oh, okay, I was coming around the other way.
As a visitor, first of all, thank you very much for such a warm welcome. You're a wonderful congregation. I felt at home from the first minute. Navigating this tricky area in this tricky world, I guess for me a compass is to think not so much what is true and what is false, or what is right and what is wrong, because so easily then we slip into I'm right and you're wrong, and then we're in trouble. But to think about what's loving and what's compassionate, and take a real light touch on what's true and what's false, but a more emphasis on what's loving and what's caring. And that feels like safe ground to me.
Going on. Oh.
I don't know how articulate I can be about this. I'm not as politically minded as some people are, and whatever. But it appears that the world wants a side to be taken. And there are opposing views, of course, about which side you should take. And that really bothers me every time I am exposed to that question or that idea. I think, my God, what about peace? Isn't that something to strive for? Why must we hip hip hooray for a side that wants to kill and destroy another side? Can't we be about peace? And I'm reminded of the song that we sang this morning, you know, there's more love somewhere, there's more joy somewhere. The last words of which I believe were there is more peace somewhere. And I thought of Israel and Palestine when we sang those words. You know, religions have been begun on an idea. Some of those religions have peace within their doctrine. Could there be a movement about peace? Well, I know there are several, but wow, I'm just really disturbed about this Israel and Palestine thing. Let me tell you, I really am.
And I would be glad to continue this conversation after service or any time. For now, as we marinate in all of this, please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn. It is number 34 in the gray hymnal. Number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. And Carol will play it through once.
Though sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not begin my love within. A prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come with heart's control. Our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and
So let inward love guide every deed. Are we free thinking? Yes. Spiritual freedom? Yes. Dedicated to love, justice, seeing everyone shine individually and collectively? Yes. Let's keep it going.
Before we leave, those of us who are part of the impromptu choir last week, practice for that song we were learning. They're good for fortune. Joan Baez, Philip song. So if you want to